She ran, her shoes pounding against the wet pavement, heart thudding like a drum in her chest. The streets were crowded, but she barely noticed the people rushing past her. She didn't run from the city, from the noise, or from the rain. It was something deeper. She ran from herself, from the mistakes she had made, from the memories she had buried, from the fear that had always held her back. Autumn had painted the city in shades of orange and brown. Leaves swirled in the wind, and the smell of wet earth filled the air. She had always loved autumn, yet today it felt heavy, almost as if the season itself were pressing down on her. Her mind raced faster than her feet, and for a moment she felt dizzy. Her apartment, her work, her life, they all felt like cages. She wanted to escape, even if she didn't know where she was running to. Then she tripped over a curb and nearly fell. Instinctively, a hand shot out to steady her. She looked up, startled. A man stood there, holding her wrist with calm certainty. His eyes were soft but steady, and he smiled slightly, not mockingly, but with a quiet warmth that made her chest ache unexpectedly. "Are you okay?" he asked. She nodded, brushing herself off, trying to regain her composure. "I'm fine," she said quickly, though her voice trembled. He didn't let go of her hand immediately. Instead, he waited, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to. She didn't. She was aware of the contact, aware of the warmth, and a strange feeling settled in her stomach, something she hadn't felt in a long time. She wanted to flee. That was her instinct. Always run, always hide, but something about him made her pause. He wasn't demanding. He wasn't asking for her life story. He was just there. They walked together for a few steps, almost accidentally, and the city blurred around her. She noticed details she hadn't before. The way the light reflected on puddles, the sound of leaves crunching underfoot, the distant laughter of children playing in the park. For the first time in years, she felt present. But then her mind reminded her of all the reasons she should leave. Relationships had always ended badly for her. People left or they didn't understand her. She didn't want to be hurt again. She didn't want to open her heart only to have it broken. "This is the last time I run," she whispered to herself silently, like a promise she had to keep. He didn't ask her to explain. He simply walked beside her, patient and quiet. And somehow that was enough. They stopped at a small cafe when the rain started falling harder, forcing them to take shelter under the awning. Water dripped down in thin streams, soaking the pavement. The world felt smaller here, enclosed by the warm glow of the cafe lights and the gentle sound of raindrops. She looked at him, and he looked back, as if he understood something unspoken. Her walls were high, built brick by brick over years of fear, yet she felt them tremble a little. I've been running for a long time," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "From people, from my past, from myself." He nodded slowly, still holding her hand. "You don't have to run anymore," he said softly. "Not if you don't want to." The words were simple, but they struck her like a bolt of lightning. She had never been offered such patience, such acceptance without expectation. Usually people wanted something from her. Love, attention, explanations. But he didn't, he just stayed. Her mind drifted to memories she had tried to forget. There were the arguments with friends who didn't understand her. The lovers who left without a word. The promises she had made to herself and broken over and over again. She had built her life on running, thinking it was safer to stay alone than to risk disappointment. But here he was, unshaken by her fear, unafraid of her walls. He took her hand not as a demand but as a vow, a quiet promise that he would be there, that he would wait, that he would understand. The rain continued to fall, soft and steady. She thought about all the times she had wanted to stop, to stay, to let someone in, but had been too afraid. Now standing there with him, she realized that fear was still there, but it no longer had control over her. She looked down at their hands, interlocked, and felt a strange warmth spread through her chest. It wasn't love yet, not the kind that movies promised, but it was connection, trust. Something she had almost forgotten existed. I don't know if I can do this," she said, almost trembling. "I'm not good at trusting people." "You don't have to be," he replied. "Not right away. You just have to let yourself try." She laughed softly, a sound she hadn't heard herself make in a long time. The tension in her shoulders eased a little. Maybe, just maybe, she could try. The rain began to lighten and the streets reflected the soft glow of the city lights. They walked out together side by side without speaking much. Words were unnecessary. The silence between them was comforting, filled with the possibility of something new. As they reached a corner, she hesitated. Her old instinct whispered for her to run, to disappear into the night and forget this meeting ever happened. But then she looked at him, at the steady, patient gaze that seemed to hold a promise without needing to speak it. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't run. She took a deep breath and allowed herself to trust the moment just a little. The city stretched out before them, full of noise and life, but for now she felt safe. Not because the city had changed or the rain had stopped, but because someone had offered her a hand to hold, and she had taken it. That night, when she returned to her apartment, she thought about the day in fragments. The sound of the rain, the warmth of his hand, the quiet understanding in his eyes. She realized that running had been her way of protecting herself, but it had also kept her from experiencing life fully. She didn't know what would happen next. Maybe he would stay, maybe he would leave, maybe she would make mistakes. But she also realized something important. She didn't have to face the world alone anymore. Not if she didn't want to. As she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, she whispered to herself again, "This is the last time I run." And this time, it wasn't just a vow to herself. Somehow it felt like a vow to someone else too. She closed her eyes, letting the memories of past fears fade into the background. Tomorrow would come with new challenges, but tonight, she had made a choice. She had stopped running, and that, she realized, was the bravest thing she had ever done. The next morning, she woke up with a strange lightness in her chest. For the first time in years, she felt a calm that wasn't forced, a peace that didn't come from running or hiding. The rain from yesterday had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the soft sunlight. Autumn leaves danced lazily along the sidewalks, as if the city itself had shifted to a gentler rhythm. She remembered the moment when he had taken her hand. It wasn't grand. It wasn't a promise spoken loudly or written in a letter. It was simple, quiet, and steady. Yet, in its simplicity, it carried more weight than she had ever imagined. It was more than a gesture. It was a vow. One that asked nothing but gave everything. When she stepped out of her apartment later that morning, she found him waiting across the street. He waved, a small warm smile on his face, and she felt her heart skip. She realized that something had changed within her. The old fear, the impulse to run, had not disappeared completely, but it had loosened its grip. She no longer felt the urge to escape. They decided to walk together casually without a destination. The city was alive with morning activity. Shopkeepers opening stores, children laughing as they ran to school, and the soft hum of traffic blending with the rustle of leaves. She noticed these details in a way she hadn't before. Normally, she would have been focused on where to go next, how to avoid people or what to do to stay in control. But today she could simply notice, simply exist. They passed a small cafe with a window display of pastries. She suggested stopping, and he agreed. Inside, the air smelled of fresh coffee and warm bread. They found a quiet corner and sat down, ordering 2 cups of tea. She watched him, noting the careful way he listened to her, the way his eyes never left her face, and how he seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts. For her, this was a revelation. She had spent so long believing that people didn't care about the real her. They cared about the surface, about appearances, about what they could gain. But here was someone who wanted to understand her, without judgment, without expectation. They spoke about small things at first, the weather, the city, the changing season. She found herself laughing more easily than she had in months. She shared a story about a failed attempt to bake cookies that ended in disaster, and he laughed with genuine amusement. It wasn't a forced laugh, but one that came from connection. She realized how much she had missed simple, unguarded moments like this. As the day went on, they wandered through the city, stopping at a park where the leaves had turned gold and red. Children ran past them, tossing leaves into the air, and she felt a pang of nostalgia for the carefree days of her childhood. She hadn't realized how much she had built walls around herself, cutting off not just love, but joy and laughter too. At one point, he reached for her hand again. This time, she didn't hesitate. The gesture felt natural, comforting. She felt a warmth spread through her that had nothing to do with the sunlight or the warm tea they had shared. It was something deeper, something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time. But even as she felt happiness, a shadow of fear lingered. Her old habits were strong. She had been hurt before. She had abandoned people. And people had abandoned her. What if she let someone in and it all fell apart? What if this moment too was temporary? That evening she faced a small crisis. A sudden phone call from work reminded her of responsibilities she had neglected. Stress built up in her chest and the familiar instinct to flee, to shut down, crept back. She felt the urge to run from him, from the connection she had allowed herself to feel. But when she looked at him, standing there calmly waiting for her reaction, she saw the same patience, the same understanding, the same quiet promise. He didn't push her. He didn't demand explanations. He simply stayed, offering his presence like a safe harbor. Something inside her shifted. She realized that this was different from the past. She had survived pain before, but she had also survived it by running away. Now she wanted to face life differently. She wanted to allow herself to feel, to trust, to take a chance. She took a deep breath and allowed herself to speak. I'm afraid, she admitted softly. I've been hurt before and I don't know if I can do this. He nodded, still holding her hand. You don't have to know right away. You just have to take it one step at a time. I'll be here with you every step. His words were simple, but they carried a depth she hadn't expected. She realized that trust didn't have to be instantaneous or absolute. It could grow quietly with patience and understanding, and maybe that was enough. Over the next few weeks, they continued to meet. Each encounter was small yet meaningful. They walked through parks, visited quiet bookstores, shared tea at cozy cafes, and sometimes they just sat together in silence. The silence was no longer uncomfortable. It was filled with connection, with presence, with the comfort of knowing someone was there without needing anything in return. She found herself laughing more often. She shared stories from her childhood, dreams she had long buried, fears she had hidden from the world. And he listened, truly listened. He didn't interrupt, judge, or offer quick solutions. He simply acknowledged her, accepted her, and stayed. One afternoon, they found themselves at the same park where they had walked when the rain had first brought them together. Leaves swirled around them as they walked, and for a moment the world felt still. She looked at him, feeling a sense of gratitude she had never allowed herself to feel. I don't know why I didn't trust people before, she said quietly. I've spent so much time running. I thought it kept me safe, but it also kept me from living. He smiled, squeezing her hand gently. Sometimes we need to run to realize what we're missing. And sometimes someone needs to be patient enough to wait until we're ready to stop. She nodded, realizing how true that was. She had spent years hiding, but now she was learning what it meant to stay, to face life with someone by her side. It wasn't easy. Fear still appeared at times like shadows on the edge of her mind. But the difference was that she no longer felt alone in facing it. Then came a moment that would forever change her. They sat on a bench under a tree, the city around them alive but distant. She looked at him, really looked at him, and felt a connection she had never thought possible. It wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It was in the small things. The way he listened, the way he waited, the way he didn't demand her heart but simply shared his own. I'm ready, she whispered, almost to herself. Ready to trust. Ready to let someone in. He reached out and held her hand again. You don't have to rush, he said. We'll take it together. Every step, together. In that moment, she realized that love, real love, didn't have to be perfect. It didn't have to be immediate or flawless. It was patient, gentle, and understanding. It was in the quiet moments, in the shared silences, in the hand held without expectation. She smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes, and felt a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with sunlight or autumn leaves. It was the warmth of connection, of trust, of choosing to stay instead of running. From that day on, she stopped running, not because fear had vanished, but because she had found someone willing to walk beside her through it. Life would still have challenges, but she no longer faced them alone. And every time she looked at him, she remembered the day he took her hand in the rain, the day he made a simple vow without words. That small, quiet moment had grown into something profound, the courage to trust, the strength to love, and the freedom to simply be. She had made a promise to herself, whispered in the quiet of her mind, this is the last time I run. And for the first time, it wasn't just a vow to herself, it was a vow shared, a promise kept, a beginning of a life no longer defined by fear, but by hope, connection, and the gentle, steady presence of someone who truly cared.